Everyone knows building a good team of developers is really difficult. You can have the best app idea in the world, but without the right development team, you're really going to struggle to actually get it off the ground. So in this episode, I speak to Andrew Bott from Hired Events. He runs a recruitment events company that connects startups with the right software developers. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing the do's and don'ts of tech recruitment, how to avoid getting sidetracked early on in your startup journey, plus also career advice for those of you looking to get into the tech industry, which is a very exciting place to be at the moment. All of that and more on this week's episode of Create, Reach, Inspire. Hey everyone, it's James here. Today I'm joined by Andrew Bott, who is CEO and founder of Hired Events. Hi Andrew.
Hi there.
How's it going?
It's going great. It's great to be in such a beautiful studio.
It's cool, isn't it? So
it is.
I'm kind of curious to know a bit about your background to begin with.
Sure.
And we'll sort of talk about what the process that led up to you starting Hired Events.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent the last about four and a half years running events around the world for another company. Through that time, I got to, help, grow that company from just doing a couple events a month to now they do over 40 events a month. And I was doing up to 6 or 7 events a month around the world, just personally, where I was literally going, 1 week from Toronto to Vancouver, then the next week to Helsinki and Stockholm. So I ran over 200 events in the last, 3-4 years. And I just, I love it. It's my area and the thing that makes me the most happy, not just networking with people, but, helping connect them to the folks that they need. Mm-hmm. I think, especially as the internet grows, of course it has so much potential to bring people together, but it gets more and more difficult to make like real personal connections with people. And because of that, events have just become more powerful. Mm-hmm. I think when you can have a chance to build a connection and actually meet someone and look them, in the eye, a lot more potential and a lot more opportunities come from that. So I decided, about 6 months ago to start my own events company, and that's hiredevents.com. And so we do events for startups, we do events for entrepreneurs, and we do events to connect companies to candidates, that are difficult for them to find and hire.
How come you chose to go into the tech industry and not another industry? What appeals to you about tech?
Well, it's not just tech, I would say.
Or tech and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So entrepreneurship, tech, and a lot of the companies that work with us it's not necessarily just a founder and their team. It's companies that are growing and kind of on the cutting edge, even if they're larger. Because, they acquire a lot of the startups and, to have that personality. But what I love about entrepreneurs is they're just, they're crazy enough to do things that don't exist yet.
Okay. To
like have an idea in their mind and actually pursue it until it becomes real. But they're not so crazy that they're just like yelling at people on the street, like just screaming about ideas, things that they want, so
sure.
They're intelligent enough and passionate enough to actually put things into action and, create them on top of being crazy enough to do things that don't exist. And for me, when I first found entrepreneurs, when I graduated university, I was like, okay, these are my people.
Yeah.
Like I finally met, like I never was into sports, so I never was, just someone who was into that. But when I met entrepreneurs, I'm like, okay, this is my group.
And you've recently been back to university as well.
I have.
Which I think is interesting. So a master's in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Cass Business School.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about that. How was that experience and how's that helped you?
Sure. Yeah. So it's funny because a lot of people, when they ask, oh, what are you doing? And I say master's. And when they ask what it's in, they're like, a master's in entrepreneurship. I didn't even know that existed. You could.
I know. It is kind of like again. Can you define entrepreneurship?
And the truth is, you can.
Yeah.
I think the reason I chose this program is number one, it was far less costly in the UK than in America. The university that I was looking at were $40 to $70,000 a year,
Wow.
for their MSCs
And
entrepreneurship.
everyone says that university is really expensive in England now. Compared,
No,
like when
for
I
me, I
went.
came here for savings.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a lot of money, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
and how did you? Obviously, Cass Business School has been established for over 100 years, hasn't it? So it's quite an institution. Presumably, you must have learnt from the best of the best while you were there. Then.
Yeah, in every graduate program, there are professors you really fit with and professors you don't. That's going to be the way that it works.
Yeah, I think anyone at university will agree with that.
Well,
yeah.
after my first, it's funny because I actually expected, I'm going to get along with every single professor. I'm going to love all of them. And I went and I didn't love all of them. I loved many of them.
Yeah.
And I would talk to one of my old professors at UC Berkeley, and I was telling her this, and she's like, Andrew, that's normal. Like it's totally okay. Not every single one is going to be.
It's the same in business as well, isn't it?
Yeah, or with friends.
Yeah.
But so there were incredible practitioners. That was my favorite part of the program. That my one of my professors is an angel investor, has invested in multiple successful startups, and comes from that background. Another professor, like our sales professor, has an incredible fast-growing business and is just a killer at sales. Our funding professor is a VC, and has worked in the VC world for 10 years. So on and on, the professors that I really resonated with, people who are really doing it. And even from the, more ivory tower side, it was great to understand the recent literature in entrepreneurship and how entrepreneurs are successful, like what separates someone who is versus someone who isn't successful.
Interesting. Yeah. And so did you know before you started that master's qualification that you were going to start a business straight after?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
So presumably that's helped you a lot. And you're 6 months in. What excites you most about your business currently?
Just being able to do it, like being able to focus on it. So the program, the master's program only ended 2 months ago now.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I've only really been able to give 100% of my time to the business for 2 months. So it is just a blast to be able to have all of my brain energy go towards my own business. It's such a fun feeling. The way that I keep telling people about it is, for my whole life, it's been like I've been helping other people's dreams come true, right? And that's fine. It helped me along the way. I wasn't ready necessarily for a lot of the time to make just my own ideas, but to be able to work on making my dreams, happen, and the things that I want to accomplish and the visions that I want to make, as opposed to someone else had a dream and I'm just employed by them, helping them accomplish what they want to. Honestly, it's a feeling I don't think I can go back from. I think I'm ruined now.
And also, I suppose having how long's the degree? A year to kind of get yourself almost like psyched up and ready to go.
Yeah.
That's probably really valuable because you're just like at the start line, ready to kind of like waiting for that firing pistol to shoot, sort of thing, which is great. What sort of so what in your what's your kind of perspective on the challenges you currently face then?
So a few, I would say, finding the things to focus on that are going to be the most effective in the short term. I don't have, a large team yet where I can pursue every idea. So I'm finding that we're focusing on the things that make us money, which makes sense. We are getting a good income, already.
That's good. I've always been very an advocate of focusing on profit and actually making sure that you make money. And I think there's too many startup founders out there who rely on investment, and therefore they kind of don't have that pressure to make money, which can be a really dangerous thing, I think, because then but if you're focusing on making money and you grow to a level, then we can start taking a team on. That you'll have almost proven the business model already, so you can just scale it that way, which is really good.
So that's the game plan, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for this business, I know that it's bootstrappable, just because I've been doing it for a month and we're making good income.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear.
So I know that it can go that way. So again, the biggest challenge for me is all these other things. There's so many directions that I'm pulled in. People who want to have partnerships, people who want to put on this event or that event, or get involved in this way. We'll give you some equity of this if you help with this. So it's hard to say no, but I think you kind of have to.
You've got to
as you
focus
grow.
on, like really refining exactly what you want to do and make sure that you keep focused. Okay, so let's talk about one of the sort of main problems that your business is designing to solve, which is recruitment in the tech sector. So in your belief, what are the problems with it? Do you think it's broken?
Well, so from the candidate side, it is.
Yeah.
From the employer side, I'm not sure that they know always. That they know the biggest problems. But if you're a highly skilled software developer, you get reached out to a lot. A lot of people are looking for you. Even if you already have a job, and the best way to reach them isn't by kind of bombarding them with invites for coffee. It's to approach it in a more personal way. So in a time when things are less and less personal, there's more automation, there's more software, there's more automated applications, and folks are relying. I think employers are relying a little too heavily on the digital side of things for a very relationship heavy process. Hiring someone is really personal. It's going to be a serious moment in their lives, and changing your company as a software developer or anybody is a big deal.
So you kind of strike me as like from seeing, obviously I attended one of your events last night. You kind of strike me as like the ultimate power networker. You've certainly thrown yourself into the kind of London tech scene.
Yeah.
And a bit of a man about town in a good way. Because you're kind of making connections. So what advice would you give to people who actually like me? I'm not always the best in these kind of networking situations where you go into a room full of people you don't really know, and it's kind of intimidating. You think, oh god, I have to go and speak to people. What advice would you give to someone who feels like that?
Well, the first is that everybody feels like that.
Yeah.
and honestly, it's simple, but most people forget it. Everyone's a little nervous.
Yeah.
Nobody's 100% comfortable in those situations. I'm not even 100% comfortable, and I've done literally hundreds of these.
Exactly.
Just on ones that I'm running, I've done over 200. I'm an event addict, so I'm going to 6 or 10 events a week, regularly, unless I'm in intensive studies. So just remembering that, I think, will make you automatically feel more comfortable. Everyone's a little nervous. No one's perfectly comfortable in a situation they don't know anybody. And the second is just say hello. Like just the word hello or the word hi is such a powerful thing. Walk up to a group who's already having a conversation and say hi. They're there outside of their home to meet people. It's okay, and I think some of it's a British thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
You're much more polite here than we are in America, where we will interrupt, by saying hello. And I think once I do interrupt here, people like it. But there is certainly a fear of interruption in UK. Like, I would love to talk to that group, but they're already talking. Like, I'm going to wait for my moment. But really, there's never a perfect moment. And
and also as well, like I've been in this situation. If you've singled out a couple of people you want to go and speak to, and they quite often that person will just be inundated with other people trying to speak to them as well. It's so hard to sometimes you've got to try and kind of butt in and be like, excuse me, can I, and then, but sometimes you've actually just got to throw yourself into the deep end and just kind of and really just you have to be a bit abrasive in a sense sometimes to kind of worm your way into the conversation. But if that's the one person you want to speak to, sometimes you've got to do it. And this is kind of what puts me off sometimes about these events, because I'm a bit like
well, what's interesting, the speakers at my events and myself, because I'm interviewing them. They're successful entrepreneurs, so it makes sense people want to talk to them. But immediately after an event, like you're the most popular person in the world, like people are lining up to talk to you, and just so from this perspective, the next day no one's talking to me. So if there's really someone you want to meet, if you want to meet the speaker of the event, send them a LinkedIn message the next day, because it's like you're just ignored after the event.
That's good advice, because it means that you've got an opening for them.
Absolutely.
It's not that cold opening. Or do you want to go for a coffee? It's I saw you speaking on stage last night.
Exactly.
You said this, and it was really, had an impact
Yes,
on me.
I'd love to have you a coffee and
Yeah.
talk to you about it. I wasn't able to connect with you at the event. I think they can be so powerful. The one or two people that reach out to me after the event like that, I always respond to them because you want to offer value and help people just like you were helped.
If you're enjoying this episode and you want to get behind the scenes clips plus lots of additional content, make sure you hit me up on Instagram. It's at Create Reach Inspire, and also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can just search for James Mulvaney, and I'm also on Twitter as well. All the details on your screen now, or if you can't see them on your screen because you're listening on podcast form, just type it into Google and it will come up. So let's get back to this week's episode of the podcast. Okay, and if someone's just recently graduated, perhaps they've got a degree in computer science, or maybe they're a UX UI designer, and they want to go out and get a career or start a career in technology.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to those kind of people who are new graduates?
So I think the most important is culture fit, and it can be the last thing that they think of when they're desperate for a job. But what I hear from, as a software developer, even a new grad software developer or UI UX or, designer, in that industry, it's the most in-demand jobs in the world. So do not just jump on the very first offer because there'll be a lot more. And really, go there and see what it's like, like go to the office. Are the people happy? Is there a community? Do they like each other? See if it's the kind of place you want to be working before you jump into it, because, as a software developer, it can be very private in a negative way if you're not with a good team, and it can be amazing if you're with people that you respect.
That's an interesting point, and another good question for the interview is, especially if you're not being interviewed necessarily by like the founder, ask. Maybe you're being interviewed by sort of someone sort of second in command, or another team member. Ask them what they like about their job. I think that's because that happened recently.
You can see it in their eyes.
Yeah. What do you like about
if they don't like it,
here?
you can see it in their eyes.
There we go.
And I've seen it at many events.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say which, because I'm doing recruiting events, but even at the recruiting event, the person at the table, I will hear them, when someone says, "Okay, so what do you like about it?" And they kind of pause, they get shifty. They're like, "Oh, I like this and that," but it's obvious. It's like it's already done. It's obvious. Even the person out there recruiting for the company, they're not that excited about it, And that's again why it's important to talk to a real person, and to get in a room with someone, whether it's at an event or whether when they invite you to that coffee, you're not just meeting at a coffee place. You're actually going to the office. I think it's incredibly important to go out and meet people, and asking for advice, I think, is the other. That we touched on that at the event yesterday, from the entrepreneurs that I was interviewing.
Advice rather than, what was it? Advice rather than asking for money.
And it's the same for a job. Advice rather than asking for a job.
Yeah.
I think absolutely. I'm always surprised how willing people are to help. Because successful people were helped along the way by lots of people, and so they're willing to give back. So ask them for that advice and have it really be advice. Don't be going after a job. Really be asking them, how you get in the industry, how they became successful, what tips they have to, be a successful candidate, and they will definitely help you. They've always helped me when I've asked.
Okay, I think that's really, really good advice.
Yeah.
So as part of your business, you have a podcast. So I'm kind of keen to pick your brains on why you chose podcasting as a medium, and what's your perception of it?
Sure. So I chose it, first of all, because it's easy to, interview people that aren't necessarily in the same country or city as you. And I think that's so powerful. Video is more difficult when you're working internationally. And for my company, it's international events, right? I'm flying to Toronto next week for, my recruiting event. Okay. And I want to be able to, touch people in multiple countries, just like my business is. So just like, you can reach out by email, or by phone, to anybody, you can do that with a podcast. And so I find that really powerful. Whereas, if you're using video, you can't have the same quality unless you're shipping them cameras or they happen to have, a killer camera in their office. And I know that when I listen to podcasts, I think you're in your car, or you're on the tube, or you're in your room making breakfast or making dinner. It's kind of like being on a cable sitcom or something. Like it's like that person. The podcast that I listen to regularly, I feel like they've been over as a dinner guest or something. Like it really feels personal. It's like, oh my God, I know Tim Ferriss. Like I know what this guy's like. Like, he laughs at these kind of jokes, and it's more personal than a YouTube video, or that it's less produced, which I think is the most important part, the most powerful part of a podcast. You really get to feel what someone's like.
Sure.
Because it's less produced, because it's an hour blocks or an hour and a half block. And I love that aspect to it.
Yeah. So, and I think it kind of links in really with the importance of storytelling for kind of startup founders. I think if you're a founder, you have got to be able to convey a story, whether that's the story of your business or the problem you're trying to solve. I think podcasting is a perfect way of linking into that.
Right. Yeah, the way I love to do it, is by, interviewing successful people, who've been there. I was saying earlier that, I don't know all the steps I need to do. This is new for me. I've helped build someone else's business, and now that I'm doing mine, I'm facing things every day that I don't know the answer, and I'm just kind of creating it out of nothing. So to be able to interview great, successful people who've been there and gone through it. I was doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So to be able to reach out and say, I'd love to interview you for a podcast, not only does it make it easier, because it opens way more doors.
Sure.
Saying, can I buy you a coffee and pick your brain is way less successful than, hey, I have a podcast, can I interview you?
I think
so
also,
just getting in the door is a big difference.
It's a business development tool then as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our events, I don't think we've had any direct sales, from our events. But absolutely, if you're looking for that, I have no doubt that it can help with that. But for me, just being able to get advice from people who've been there, it's easier when you're offering value, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I've heard you talk about before, offering value to folks is a way in the door always.
Completely. Okay, so that links really nicely to my next question. Obviously, you've interviewed a lot of interesting founders, successful people, investors, etc., etc. What are the top 3 traits, in your opinion, of a good entrepreneur?
Oh gosh, I think the first is jumping in, just doing it.
Yep.
So people who it's really almost everyone. Everyone who's a successful entrepreneur, they just do it. It's like, yes, it might not be working at the beginning. Yes, there's roadblocks. Sometimes they've gone 2 or 3 years before it works. For example, when I talked to Jeff Lynn, who founded Cedars, which was the company that invented equity crowdfunding.
Yep.
It took them 3 years to get government approval. Before they could make anything.
That's a long time to be kind of sat in limbo.
Extremely long time to not be able to do anything.
Yeah.
To just be fighting for this idea. So you have to be someone that just jumps in, that handles those things. But I think the second biggest trait, you kind of have to be a little bit blind to how difficult it's going to be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you have to be a little bit overconfident in your skills. Because if you look in reality at how difficult it is, then you probably wouldn't do it.
There was times over the past year, which we've been working on podcast.co, where I was like saying to myself, why am I putting myself through this again? And you're completely right. I think when you get there, you forget about the pain you went through. But you're right. It's not easy. Starting a company, building a software product, whatever, it's difficult stuff.
Right.
And you've got to have that resilience, I think. Yeah. Yep. And so what would point number 3 be?
I would say number 3 is somebody that works well with other people. Being able to inspire other people is not a skill that everyone has. And I know for me, it's something that I had to really work towards. I used to be really, really shy. When I was growing up, I couldn't talk to anybody. And it's something that I worked actively on for 15 years, before I really gained the skill, and I did it by going and working for companies that gave me the skills that I wanted. So the first skill I wanted was to be able to talk to people. So I went and I worked for a sales company where I had to talk to people every day.
Uh-huh.
The next skill I wanted was to be able to immediately get to know strangers. So I worked for a nonprofit group that raised money on the street. So I was one of those people on the sidewalk saying, "Hey, do you care about the environment?"
Have you ever heard of the term chugger?
No.
So it's a charity mugger.
Oh, okay.
That's what they know it as, apparently.
Oh, okay. Well, that was me.
Chugger, yeah.
And I learned how to talk to strangers by doing that job. So I was paid to gain the skills that I needed. But I think...
I mean, that's going to be, like, I don't think I could ever do that. That's proper pushing yourself
but you can
outside
do
your
it.
comfort zone.
Yeah, of course you can. We all can learn.
Yeah.
At one point, you were crawling around on the ground,
true.
being fed, mashed up food. Like, if you learned how to walk and talk, you can learn how to talk to people on the sidewalk. It's just a different skill set, right? So I think all the entrepreneurs I've met, they're not all like 100% unbelievably social people, but they're all people that can get along with others, inspire a small team, and communicate well. You have to gain those skills if you don't have them, I think.
So just to wrap up then, so what would you say, if you could say one piece of business advice that you've received has been the best, do you know what that would be?
I would say to start now.
Yeah.
Even if it's not perfect. Even if you don't know where it's going to lead to. I've heard that from many different people. Just start now, because even if it turns into 3 different ideas, even if one fails, gaining that experience in the very beginning is incredibly important. And I'll add on to that, sharing too what you're going through and reaching out to other people, whether that's creating content or actually just, meeting folks, in social environments. I think those 2 things.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to finish up then, how can people listen to your podcast? How can they find out about your events and, follow you, Andrew Bott, on social media?
Absolutely. So the podcast is Meet the Founders with Andrew Bott, and you can find it on all the major, podcast platforms. And to find out about our events, you can go on hiredevents.com. And on our, homepage, it has, the events that are coming up that month. You can always subscribe or, search for us on Eventbrite as well. And we do events all around the world.
Thank you very much for your time today, Andrew. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, same. Thank you so much.
So thanks for listening to this week's episode. To get the latest episode directly to your favourite podcast app, please remember to subscribe to the podcast. Just search for it on Spotify or Apple Music. We're on all of the major podcast platforms and apps. Did you know you can also follow me on Instagram at Create, Reach, Inspire for lots of latest information and tips and tricks, plus also behind the scenes content of making this podcast. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please remember to hit that like button and write us a review, or if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn at James Mulvaney. Thanks for watching, take care, and have a great day.